Hey soldiers, the next few videos on the channel are going to examine what big money institutions like governments, corporations, and wealthy individuals, what they're doing with their money as the economy evolves. What direction is that money going in to be treated best? Now, everything I'm going to say is just, an examination. You are going to have to perform your own due diligence to see if any of these moves make sense for you. And we don't mimic here. Just because Warren Buffett does something doesn't mean, it's necessarily a good idea for us to do it. But we are seeing more and more institutions, governments in particular, moving away from the dollar. Now, let me preface all of this by saying the dollar is not going to go away. All right. There are two sides of this argument. Some people like Kevin O'Leary are saying, oh, all this talk about, the dollar being diminished in status is hogwash. Okay, that's not true. And then there's another camp that's saying, look, the sky's falling, the dollar is going to disappear tomorrow. That's not true. As with most things, the truth lies in the middle. Now, we have seen a consistent decline in the amount of dollars held in reserve by foreign countries. All right. We were up somewhere in the 68% range during the early 2020 period, 2019, going into 2020. And now we're down around 58%. Okay. So that has dropped. And if you look at the chart, it has over time overall dropped. So the number of dollars being held in reserve for a variety of reasons, which we have talked about ad nauseum, those dollars are being traded for other things like gold. All right, we'll get into that in a second. Now, these gold videos typically don't do that well, but on this channel, we talk about what matters, not necessarily what is popular. All right, because when the aliens dig this channel up, when the alien anthropologists, 20,000 years from now, when they dig this channel up, they're going to say, wow, that guy, he knew what was going to happen. For the most part, he told the truth. He didn't get many views, but he told the truth. In any event, in all seriousness, all right, guys, look, go ahead. I need you to subscribe. This channel is growing. I need you to hit that subscribe button, enlist, become a soldier of finance. As we go on this journey to figure it all out, to solve this money problem as the economy continues to evolve rapidly, I also want you to let me know you subscribed. Let me know you did that in the comments, and I will salute you. Now, everyone, whether you have already subscribed or whether your finger is hovering over the button right now, hit the thumbs up. Go ahead and let YouTube know this is content that we need more of. All right. So you do that by hitting the thumbs up. Share it with a friend. Share it with a loved one. Now, Zimbabwe is the latest country, one of the latest to say, hey, look, we're going to move in the direction of gold. Okay. Zimbabwe has had runaway inflation. They issued a $1 trillion note, banknote a few years back. All right. Now, we always talk about gold, and a lot of the gold videos you see out there will predict, $3,000 gold, $5,000 gold. By the end of the decade, gold will be $10,000. Well, you better hope not. Because if it is, then that means we are in the Weimar Republic on steroids, okay? Gold's value is just kind of like, I was thinking about this today as I was driving up the road, and I saw houses, all right, that were going for, the sign said starting in the 900s, all right? And I was taken aback. I'm like, wow, this neighborhood, 900, okay, fine, okay. I can remember when it was the 500s, and that was not 20 years ago. It was maybe like 15 years ago, okay? So you might get excited about the value of your house increasing, okay? You might puff your chest out, cross your arms akimbo, and say, yeah, my house is worth $1 million. I bought it for $250,000. That's great. Now, here's the problem, though. If you plan on moving to another neighborhood, you're going to see that the overall inflation of real estate, if you want to move to a similar neighborhood or a neighborhood that has a better neighborhood, okay, you're going to see that while you prospered on the value of your house, everything else is inflated around it. That's why when these folk come out here and say, oh, gold is going to be $10,000, I hope we don't see that. Not in my lifetime, because if we did see gold at $10,000, then we would have hyperinflation, and it would be bad. It would be very bad for us economically, okay? And we don't want to see hyperinflation. So the IMF, okay, the International Monetary Fund, they are one of these quasi-governmental organizations that for quite a long time has dictated the economic policy of countries, oftentimes to their detriment. They are a lender, all right, along with the World Bank, okay? And they lend money to these developing economies, oftentimes at onerous terms. China's out there playing that game now too. China and the BRICS are supposed to be developing some sort of development bank as well. Now, look to them also. They're not going to be the panacea to the World Bank or the IMF, okay? They're probably going to have onerous terms too, because if you look at what China does in Africa, they set the terms, and then what they do, if you can't pay them, they take possession of your infrastructure, okay? And the people in these nations, African nations, and Jamaica did it to an extent too, that are signing these terms, are basically signing away their rights to their own land, which is insane, okay? So Zimbabwe said, you know what, hey, we got to take control of this situation. We're going to do it by utilizing gold. We reported a little while ago how Zimbabwe had created a gold coin, and how they then went from the 1 ounce coin and created fractional coins, okay, for their citizens. Now, the IMF back in December, they had a problem with that. They said that, they were going to stop lending, trying to this seems like kind of an extortion attempt to stop lending to Zimbabwe. Told them that they didn't like the issuance of the gold coins. Well, what do you like better? Them issuing $1 trillion notes? All right. So now Zimbabwe is going a step further. First, they issued the 1 ounce. They got pushback on that from the IMF. Then they issued the fractional ounces. They got pushback from that. They got pushback on it from the IMF. Now, why Zimbabwe's launch of a gold-backed digital currency has sparked fears among economists. One of the main reasons is because the United States is trying to launch a digital currency. So are all of the major world powers. The European Union wants to do it. Britain, the UK, they're in the process of doing it. And none of them have talked about backing it up with any kind of commodity. So anytime you do that, all right, and the fiat currency of the major economic players don't have that, all right, that's a threat to them. So Zimbabwe is doing that, and the IMF doesn't like it. And you can best believe that the major members of the IMF, which are European Union countries and the United States of America, have had a lot of influence into the messaging around what Zimbabwe is doing. Now, why are we talking about this? Because basically, the IMF is telling Zimbabwe, get away from that gold. Go back to just straight fiat. Get away from that gold, okay? You don't want to mess with that. We know that it's real money because our central banks are buying it, okay? All of the central banks are buying it and or hold massive amounts of it. You don't see the United States selling its gold, do you? Okay? And we went over the central banks, and we do it every month, about how they are breaking records in the acquisition of gold, right? So Zimbabwe says, I want to get in on the game too, okay? They're not dummies. They know where this economy is going. So earlier this week, the African nation of Zimbabwe launched a gold-backed digital currency at a time when the country's currency continues to weaken against major currencies. This move comes nearly a year after Zimbabwe launched gold coins last June in another attempt to stabilize its currency. But that too could not slow down the rapid devaluation of the Zimbabwean currency against the US and other major currencies. The Zimbabwean dollar is currently trading at more than $2,000 for $1. Okay, it was trading around $1 to $650 on the black market in June of last year when the gold coins were introduced, as per Al Jazeera. So Al Jazeera reported that last year. And now this recent move to introduce gold-backed digital currency is the African nation's latest attempt to stabilize and strengthen its currency. Remember, these guys had to issue $1 trillion note. They have had one of the highest, I think the second highest inflation rate in recorded history of the world. All right. Bad fiscal management, bad monetary management. And now they're trying to come off of that, and they're using gold to help them. Holders of physical gold coins at their discretion will be able to exchange or convert through the banking system into gold-backed digital tokens. The Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe said in a statement, it invites individuals and corporate entities to use the digital currency, which can be bought either in Zimbabwean dollars or foreign currency. Now, look, this gives me a little consternation because let's be honest about it. Zimbabwe has not been the best manager of its finances. Okay, so I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to have this digital currency and back it with a stable commodity. But I've got to see some accounting, all right, in order to have even a scintilla of faith in that. The African country now joins Nigeria, Ghana, and South Africa in having introduced digital currencies, even as several others have plans in the works. But the digital currency, which is the first ever issued by the country's central bank, hit the market this week with a lukewarm reception from economists and Zimbabwean citizens. So it's kind of like what we saw in Nigeria, which we reported on, where the citizens were reluctant to take up the Naira, which is Nigeria's central bank digital currency. Now, before we dive into the fearful responses coming from economists, let's first understand what this gold-backed digital currency is all about. What is gold-backed digital currency? Backed by a certain amount of gold, which helps keep its value stable, this currency is tied to the market value of the gold. All right? So gold, the attempt here is to prevent powers within Zimbabwe or externally from really manipulating this by you'd have to manipulate the price of gold, and there is some of that out there, but you can't get too crazy with it. Otherwise, the world is going to, just like if they did it to oil, the world's going to say, hey, wait, what the hell's going on? Who's trying to do this? The Zimbabwe gold-backed digital currency will be used as legal tender and a store of value alongside the Zimbabwean dollar and bond notes. Users can buy and sell it using Zimbabwean dollars and other foreign currencies, the report mentioned. Ideally, backing a digital currency with gold involves having a certain measure of gold reserves and depends on the current market value of gold. So you've got to have the physical stuff there. This is why I am loath to participate in gold ETFs or mutual funds or something like that. Where's the gold? Are we talking about physical gold? Are we talking about mining? And you dig a gold mine, there's no guarantee there, right? All right, so that's why when you talk about, instruments that are dependent on gold reserves, there's got to be some trust there. And I'll be honest with you guys, Zimbabwe isn't the most trustworthy when it comes to monetary policy. Okay, how can they be coming off of the, years when they printed up that $1 trillion note and, did things like that? According to state-owned media reports, Zimbabwe in April had 12,346 ounces of gold in reserves valued at $22.8 million. They're small fries when it comes to gold reserves. So now, at the current price, that's $22.8 million. They are saying they want to build their reserves to $100 million. What can we learn from that? They want to buy more gold, which is consistent with what we've seen from the central banks. Everybody's saying, hey, wait a minute. The prevailing currency, the dollar, is under so much scrutiny and so much fire. Okay, the U.S. doesn't look like it has a rudder right now. Let's hedge our bets. Okay, not saying sell all the dollars, but let's go back and ground ourselves in a form of money, a real form of money that has shown value, had held value for thousands of years. Zimbabwe's gold-backed digital tokens have a vesting period of 180 days. Have a prescribed, what does that mean? Vesting period of 180 days. So I guess you got to hold on to it for 180 days before you can do anything with it. They kind of try to slide past that. Have a prescribed asset status and are acceptable as collateral for loans as well. Zimbabwe, where hyperinflation has been a recurring economic feature over the last 2 decades, reportedly uses both US dollars and Zimbabwe dollars for transactions. So this is another reason why the IMF has consternation about this, because one of their largest members, the United States of America, owns the US dollar, right? That's their or our fiat currency, also happens to be the world's reserve currency. And to the extent that Zimbabwe is dealing less in US dollars and more in gold, that's certainly not something that the United States or the prevailing powers want to see. The latest move by the African nations to introduce gold-backed digital currencies come after introducing similar coins, a part of a wider plan by the central bank to stabilize the country's local currency, which has been faltering against the US dollar by mopping up excess liquidity in the market. All right. So historically, Zimbabwe's currency system has largely been unstable. Okay. So we've gone into that in great detail. And it was, I actually said $1 trillion note. In 2008, Zimbabwe issued $100 trillion banknote. Okay. And look, man, you might as well take a piece of shredded paper out of the garbage can. It's worth more than that. All right. So this is what they're coming off of. All right. A tremendous, period of hyperinflation and just economic stupidity. The new gold-backed digital currency has for now failed to convince many economists regarding its effectiveness and the whole idea behind its introduction. Even the IMF has warned the nation against it. The IMF, thou doth protest too much. You don't want Zimbabwe to be financially independent. The IMF cautioned Zimbabwe against adopting a gold-backed digital currency to deal with macroeconomic challenges like volatility in their local currency, saying it should rather liberalize its foreign exchange market. On the other hand, Clive Fambela, and if I'm mispronouncing that, this is the Chief Director of Communications in the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development in Zimbabwe, he said, these are financial instruments designed to give an investment alternative to gold coins and other assets. So that's what his perspective is. Godfrey Kanyenza, an economist and founder of the Labor and Economic Development Research Institute of Zimbabwe, lauded the introduction of the digital currency, but said it would not solve Zimbabwe's woes. While the idea of launching digital coins is noble, as it mops up excess liquidity and stabilizes the local unit, this is no different from the gold coins being introduced. It might be different. The gold coins are tangible. Okay, if I got one of those, I know I own it. All right. How comfortable do you feel holding on to the Zimbabwe digital currency, even if it is gold backed? All right, considering their history. So, crisis of confidence. But look, the IMF doesn't like it yet, and still, their most prominent members are buying the hell out of gold. Gold is, again, an instrument that's going to preserve your buying power, your purchasing power. It is not designed to give you income, and it is not designed to appreciate like a share of Amazon or whatever stock, Berkshire Hathaway. It's not designed to do that. It's designed to preserve your buying power. For example, I always give the analogy of the Roman, but let me give another one. If you dug up King Tut and somehow reanimated him and gave him back all of the gold he owned, he would be just as wealthy as he was back then based on his gold holdings. Okay, not more, but just as. So he would be able to purchase the same amount of stuff, okay, and be considered just as wealthy as he was if you just took his gold holdings. Gold does that, right? Now, over long periods of time, gold has, definitely kept up with inflation. Our lifespans are brief in comparison to what gold has been able to do over the centuries, okay? So you got to take that into account. Now, if you are acquiring assets with the intent of just using them to boost your wealth, and you're never going to sell them. So you're not going to incur taxation on them in most cases. You're going to just, somehow keep that going to build generational wealth in your family. Now, in that case, gold could definitely, be something that holds a prominent place, a very prominent place in a portfolio. Or if you're planning on passing that along to some foundation to help them maintain their wealth, okay? So gold is something you definitely want to think about. You definitely want to keep an eye on these organizations that are dealing heavily in gold, like, again, the central banks of the world. Go back and check out the videos that we've done on that. And I want you to check out this white folk getting taxed just because they're white. Okay? Can you believe that? We're here in the 21st century, and we're still doing things like that here in the United States, proposing insanity like that. This is another reason why I say that, this is fiscal and monetary madness that we're seeing occur. Fiscal policy that dictates you tax people, just to come up with this, tax people based on the color of their skin, is definitely unconstitutional. It shouldn't even be suggested, but it is being suggested in the United States of America. So gold is one of those assets that unless you sell it, like there are many assets, and unless you sell it, the tax man doesn't have to know anything about it, okay? Stocks, if you have a dividend paying stock and it kicks off that dividend, you are responsible for the taxes on that at some point, okay? But take a look at this. Is it time to start rethinking, the types of assets you hold? Business, that's an asset, right? Yes. And this lady wants to tax those if you're white. Guys, check out the video. I'll talk to you soon.